It is June 3rd, 2026, just after 4 a.m. in the morning in downtown Houston, Texas. That is our skyline right there. And just got done with the workout at the gym. It's a beautiful skyline. It's nice to look at this every day. But anyway, I want to do a video on relationships. That's what I do. Just discussing how men can do a better job in relationships, or have better practices in relationships. I know a lot of men want to, and women too, but I am kind of doing it from what I've learned from my 50 years. So I speak more to men, and I kind of use criminal cases to do that. I've used a dual mating strategy to do that. And, saying that the alpha bang side of the dual mating strategy is better than the beta male provider. I've fully covered that. And lastly, I've seen that these cases kind of fall into two different categories. One is the beta male provider meeting his demise from the wife, and then the wife meeting her demise from a beta male that's lost control. That's kind of what I've noticed, and so that's kind of a guide for you folks out there. But anyway, ladies, if you have a beta male husband that's losing control, that's a warning sign. And men, if you're a beta male provider and you've lost respect from your woman, that's a warning sign. Those are key issues, and we've seen that the consequences are grave in nature for both. And it doesn't always have to end in murder or losing your life, but when all the holes in the Swiss cheese align, anything's possible in life in general, right? A lot of us have escaped some situations. My dad used to tell me, like I said, he's a brilliant man, and he taught me a lot of things. And one of the things he said, I had a car accident one time, and a little fender bender, and I was upset about it. And he said, how many times have you almost had an accident, but you escaped it by doing something? He said, just because you escaped that accident doesn't mean that, it was going to be an accident, but all the holes in the Swiss cheese didn't align, right? But today it did. So, try to have less of those, close calls. And, because at some point, all the holes in the Swiss cheese will align. So we can do the same for marriages and relationships. So anyway, but I want to cover a criminal case today. And so we can do an after action on it and discuss how maybe things that we see here can help improve our relationships. And the case I want to cover was from Kingston, New York. I think it's back in 2010, I believe. Not sure exactly the year, but just definitely several years ago, roughly about a decade ago at least. But it happened in Kingston, New York. A gentleman by the name of Tom Coleman, better known as Tom Coleman, was found deceased in his car by his wife in a Planet Fitness parking lot, and he was parked pretty far away. And he arrived there from the surveillance video from Kohl's, that was a business nearby. He arrived at the Planet Fitness at roughly 4:45 a.m. So we all know, at that time of day, there's really nobody in the parking lot, and there really was nobody in the parking lot. But he parked far away, which was kind of odd. Normally we want to be front row Joe, right? So that was an issue. But when they did get the surveillance video, they found that, it wasn't real clear, the video, but they found that he met with somebody in a white SUV. They talked for a minute, they parked side by side, and that white SUV leaves. And then his wife, that was at 4:45 in the morning, roughly 5 in the morning. And then about the same time as it is now. Let's see, look at the traffic on the road, none, right? So that's how it was then. But his wife ends up finding him in the car, and he was deceased. He was laid back in his I guess seat, you would say, all the way back. His pants were or his belt was unbuckled, and his pants zipper was halfway down. Now, they think that was a staged deal, and the prime suspect turned out to be his best friend. And what have I said? Go see a prior video I just did on love triangles. What do you need for a love triangle to exist? You need two beta males, and that's what you have here. And not to talk, it's not to judge anybody harshly, but it's just fact, that in this case, we did have two beta males. Like I said, they believe his best friend, Gilberto Nunez from the Dominican Republic, who is a dentist in Kingston, New York, and also a family friend, they believe that he met with Tom Coleman in the parking lot of that Planet Fitness and gave him a coffee laced with midazolam. Midazolam is a sedative that you use in dentistry, and apparently it's when you're wanting to sedate somebody, but not have them go under. But Gilberto Nunez, along with his dental hygienist, said he did not use midazolam. However, they did have it in their office. Although they didn't use it as a practice, he did have access to it. So, kind of funny. Let's move a little further. The cause of death for Tom Coleman was acute midazolam poisoning. And his friend Gilberto Nunez, the dentist, has access to midazolam. And furthermore, Gilberto Nunez also has a white SUV, which that was seen pulling up next to Tom Coleman, a white SUV. Now, again, it's not real clear, but they did have a headlight specialist that said, now it kind of seems a little wonky science, but the headlight specialist said that the pattern of light was consistent with the one his best friend had, Gilberto Nunez. So the headlight specialist, said that he believed it was Gilberto Nunez's vehicle. If that wasn't enough, like I said, a beta male is a very dangerous individual. I said they're the most dangerous individual, and I want the men, we're doing these I'm doing these videos to hopefully teach men to be very wary of any friends that are beta males. And either, you can assess what you want to do with them, but always keep a close eye on them. Beta males are very nice guys. They're people pleasers, but they tend to be not so nice when they don't get their way and they lose control. They're shapeshifters. They're, they're just, they like to manipulate situations to keep control. And they're nice guys as long as they have control, right? Well, Gilberto Nunez was having an affair with Tom Coleman's wife, and he seemed to be obsessed. So two things that a beta male will do, and I want to give this information to guys, is two things a beta male will do is, one, have an affair with your wife. Alpha males, and again, these are container words, but men of mental strength, know better than to be what's the word? But just morally bankrupt than to have an affair with your best friend's wife, a friend's wife, just anyone you know. Okay, that's a beta male move. We want to promote being alpha males here, so don't do that. Okay, so clear sign he's a beta male. Not only was he having an affair with his wife, he was falling in love with her. Obsessively, and being obsessed with a woman, that's a scarcity mindset, because what you're doing is you're saying, well, this is the only woman that can please me or love me, or I'm not worthy of any other women. I'm not, it's just a very narrow-minded, definitely, just the narrow-minded way to look at life. I mean, life, there's, life is an abundant thing, and there's abundance in life, and abundance in women especially. We see them all around us, right? And if this lady can please you, then there is another woman out there that can please you, and you need to have enough confidence and security in yourself to know that you can get another woman, right? So anyway, you shouldn't be obsessive and just lose your mind, right? And he really did. Some of the things he did, Gilberto Nunez, is he ended up sending. He had a burner phone. We all know burner phones. Those are those are phones of the wicked. And on the burner phone, he texted. He texted Linda, the lady he's having an affair with, and he texted his best friend Tom, Tom's wife, right? He texted Tom and his wife, whom he's having the affair with, and he said to both of them from this phone, he said that, in separate text messages to each of them that they were both having affairs. Well, Tom was not having an affair, but so Linda saw that and was like, whatever. He wanted to make her mad. So, but he also wanted Tom to figure out that his wife was having an affair. So that's why he sent the message. This is weird, right? This is stupid. He also sent Linda a email that he claimed was from his mother, but it was from him. And his mom was saying how, Linda needed to be with Gilberto Nunez, and the fake mom saw that, if they got together, they were soulmates. From what she saw of them, they belonged together forever and eternity, and she needs to make a choice and choose Gilberto. And I mean, it was all fake, but that's just. Can you not be more beta? That's beta AF, as I say. Can you not be more beta than that? Faking that you're the mother and sending it to your lover and trying to get her to break up with your best friend and her husband. Now, a woman's gonna know, guys. I'm telling you, I've said this before. Women know beta males. They know, they can smell beta. And I'm telling you, she probably smelled beta all over that. You're faking that you were somebody. He also was going to pull off, this is crazy. He also was going to pull off that he was a member of the CIA was investigating Tom Coleman for having an affair and blah, blah, blah. And he created a fake CIA ID. He eventually gets convicted of creating a fake CIA ID. He created fake CIA documents alleging that they had an investigation into her husband, her now dead husband, that, he suspected of being the killer. And they were investigating him for the affairs he was having, which Tom Coleman was a physical therapist, a PhD level physical therapist. He has nothing to do with the government. An affair with another woman would have nothing to do with CIA secrets. So I don't know what he was doing. And when he got confronted about that, his answer was, "Oh, people just do dumb things, And yeah, that's very beta AF. But one thing we can say is that, again, just my opinion, not a psychologist, but this is what you can tell from, beta males or whatever. They often tend to be sociopathic, they often tend to be narcissistic, and they tend to be Machiavellian. So, and that's just an opinion. But what does that personality trait? What's a big indicator of that personality trait? It's lack of remorse. And just grandiosity, arrogance, but it's all fake. It's so people won't challenge them, and if they can keep this outward appearance, then they're good because they can maintain control. And that's Gilberto had that kind of, outward type, definitely, the police brought him in, I think 10 times to interview him. He he should have gotten a lawyer, but that's, again, one thing that a sociopath will do. They think they can talk their way out of things, But yeah, and Gilberto Nunez, he never admitted to doing anything. He never admitted to, being, part of this murder. But if you ask me, right, he did it. Oh, he definitely did it. But it was whether you can prove it or not, right? It's not what you know, it's what you can prove, Hoyt. That's from Training Day. But anyway, he responded to the scene of the murder, once the police called him or whatever, and he's, being over dramatic and oh my God, so sad, and, he did it. I mean, who else would have motive, right? But here's the weird thing, and here's the thing I do want to get across, because we're here to learn and teach from these episodes. And here's what I want to get across to men is, number one, don't be a beta bitch. And number two is, again, what are we seeing from these cases that we tend to be learning? One is how much sex women are having, in almost every case, and again, not to be overly focused on that, but, because, it is what it is. But I definitely think it's a conditioning that many in our society and our culture don't realize. And women have done a good job to, and no shade on it. I don't see any of this as moral or immoral. I see it as, how am I going to play the game now that I know this information, right? But almost every one of these cases, a lot of them arise out of female sexuality, and they're having affairs a lot of times. And almost even if it's the the beta male provider meets his demise, or she meets her demise. Almost every time there's going to be some kind of infidelity. I'm going to try to go back and see, maybe do I'm just going to rough off my head. I'm going to say at least 80 to 90% of these cases I've covered have involved female promiscuity or female infidelity or female sexuality. And what it does show is that females are highly sexual. Tom's wife, Linda, was having an affair with his best friend. Now we'll sit there all day long and get on Gilberto Nunez about this, but do we, shame her? I mean, she's sitting there in the courtroom, and I'm gonna do a spoiler alert. Gilberto Nunez is not convicted of this crime. They acquit him. A New York jury acquits him of the crime. It was fairly a weak case to a certain degree, but there definitely was a lot of circumstantial evidence that he did it. I am kind of surprised that they acquitted him. But she's in the courtroom during this, acquittal, and she gets up and is storming out of the courtroom. You're a sociopath, you're a psycho, you're a da da da. But this whole thing started because you were, sucking his D and having him blow your back out, and he was clapping the cheeks. I mean, I mean, sometimes I marvel at women's lack of insight into their behavior. I mean, you're storming out of a courtroom, and had you, not been banging your husband's best friend, he would have been alive. I mean, so, arguably alive, right? Maybe something else could have gotten them, but you're one of the main catalysts to this whole thing, and you have the nerve to even be sitting in the courtroom. I have an issue with that, but and they were sending emails back and forth like they were in love, and they were marking anniversaries like each month, and she was calling Gilberto Nunez her sexy stud muffin, and while she's married, and her husband finds out, right? And he finds out about the affair, and he allows it to go on. And this is another learning point that I want to get across is, gentlemen, when you find your wife having an affair, what have I said? Don't go snooping, but once you find that out, you've got to leave. And one of the reasons why is sexuality signifies power. I mean, how do we diss a guy sometimes? And again, it's a I would say across the board culturally, it would be a well-accepted diss, right? If it, like rappers, and I banged your bitch, I effed your girl. That's if I was standing there and I heard that, I kind of be like, okay, he's the alpha here. He's in the power position. He's effing my girl. I'm trying to get YouTube friendly, but yeah, you banging my biatch. Yeah, I would, and your wife, to me, is going to see it that way. He's the alpha dog. You the beta. I mean, we all know the stupid genre of corn. Is the everyone laughs about it now. The cuck chair in hotels. It has a term now, but that's acting. And it's a power dynamic. We all understand the power dynamic, but it's acting. I don't know if those relationships would last. It's not healthy for a marriage to be the cuck. I'm going to say, for gentlemen, that is not a strong relationship position. If someone's banging your girl, you have to leave. You've now been cucked. You are your wife. I mean, unless again, there are exceptions to every rule, but understand you're probably not that exception. I've said this in other cases, just like, if girls, I can beat up a man. Well, there's one or two girls out there that can do that, but you're probably not the one or two. Well, if your girl's getting banged by, big bad Billy Bob, with the 12-inch D, you are beta and he's alpha, and you need to leave. Something happened to where your wife did not see you as the alpha in that relationship. And the only way you can restore that is she's going to have to beg and beg and beg her way back to your life. But you're going to have to cut contact. You're going to have to break up. But what Tom Coleman does here is he's like, hey, buddy, yeah, that's cool. We can be friends, and you can bang my girl. You can bang my wife, and we'll just. They were doing this, and they were friends. They showed an a text message. Tom Coleman, Linda's wife, is sending his buddy, hey, your girlfriend's baking cookies now. And he's like, I love her so much. Like, you're sending your best friend? That's a cuck corn episode. No, you can't. Guys, do not do that. And this is so important. A lot of times, people will be like, why do you care about dating it? Because that led to his demise. That led to his death. Not taking care of that situation properly. And your wife needs you to lead her, whether it's cutting that crap off, which that's not going to work in this case, I don't believe, but also saying, no, I don't approve of that. You're not going to do that, and I'm leaving. So now she's got to make a choice, either to go with him or come with you. But again, I say it's over, find you another girl. But again, he needed to lead his wife in that situation and go, this ain't, no. Good women don't do this. No. And women I date don't do this. Women I am the husband of don't do this. Because that would have prevented her from storming out of a courtroom during his own murder trial. And when women don't have that leadership, they're gonna, I'm sorry. And this, I know it angers women, but women are grown up kids and they need a leader. They want a daddy. That's why we love being called daddy. And I said this in another video I've got, connect the dots. This gets corroborated, but if you're daddy, then lead like a daddy. You don't just want to be called daddy, well, you might want to, but, get called daddy and not have the responsibility. But you also need to have the responsibility, but she also needs to make sure she knows that you're that authority too. You don't do what daddy says, it's kick rocks time, girl. So, but again, that led to his demise. He allowed this love affair to go on. He stayed in the marriage, and he's allowing his wife. I've said it before. I want men to understand this. This is a key point men need to understand in relationships. Women understand power dynamics better than men. Okay, they do. And they understand covert power dynamics. They understand, subtle power dynamics. They understand. I've done another video on text messaging. They know power dynamics in text messaging. And that's why I say women smell beta on guys, because they know power dynamics. They know when you're not in the power position in numerous situations. I've said this before. Don't think you're fooling a woman by acting like you're in a power position when you're not. She knows. She can smell. Women know it better than men. And, and it's done subconsciously. It's not even in their conscious, so they're going to know. It's the ick factor. It's something that they can't even verbalize. Right. So yeah, like I said, Gilberto Nunez did this. He became obsessed with Linda Coleman, and like I've said, here's one thing we need to learn from this is get your butt in the gym, get in shape. Tom Coleman, I'm not going hard on him, not disrespecting him. We want to honor Tom Coleman. He was a wonderful man. Everybody said he was an awesome man. His ex-wife also said he was an awesome man. They had divorced 12 years earlier. She said he was so strong about keeping family together. That's probably why he let the love triangle go on. But she talked about what an honorable man he was. And that's his ex-wife, but you got to get in the gym. You got to get jacked, because his wife, Tom Coleman's wife, was calling his best friend, Gilberto Nunez, who she's banging, Mr. Sexy. You need to be Mr. Sexy. And number one, that's a mindset. And number two, that is a look. Tom Coleman was diagnosed during his autopsy with mild obesity and an enlarged heart because he had high blood pressure and he had clogged arteries. Okay, we need to get in shape. You need to get in the gym. It's going to affect the way you act. It's going to affect your mindset. It's going to affect the way you perform. It affects your, if men have ED, that's going to see. Women don't have, everyone's had ED at some point, but if you have consistent ED, get that taken care of. Go to the doctor, figure it out. Get in the gym, exercise, get those veins and get those arteries cleared out. Talk to your doctor about getting on Cialis, Viagra, something, again, because that's a power move. A man that can't get an erection, she may say, oh, it's okay, but it's not once or twice, okay, been there, done that, guilty as charged. Once or twice, we all have a bad day, and maybe someday I'll tell you my bad day story, but not today. It's hilarious, but anyway, but you can't consistently have that. You got, that's just that's, like I talked about, human mating, human reproduction is about your virility, so, you can't be mildly obese, and bad blood pressure and not being able to get your D up and your woman's respect you. Those are power moves, like I said. Just understand that. I could sit here all day and discuss power moves, right? But again, that was the thing that I noticed, and women love sex. They are run by their hoo-haws. They're run by their vajayjays more than we know. The more that I teach this stuff, the more that I teach relationships and stuff like that. I have it, well studied, well versed in all this stuff. But now when they say you teach something, you learn it better. I'm learning more and more as I teach this. I learn even more, and what I'm learning even more is how much women are run by their arousal, their physical arousal, and by their sexuality. It's amazing. I mean. Now that I'm like putting all the, I'm teaching this stuff, putting the dots together, I'm like, damn, yeah, I see it, so understand that. And it all comes down to who's daddy in a situation. And women want the guy who's powerful, who has status, who has emotional strength, who has physical strength, who's courageous, who has skills, who is respected among other men, and that's a powerful man. But status doesn't matter. Your performance doesn't matter. I mean, and not just sexual performance. I'm saying daily performance, your confidence, your social performance. It's everything, and I could go on and on about that. But again, I think that Tom's lack of physical health, it affected him. And again, he had sleep apnea because of his mild obesity. And that caused, normally the amount of midazolam he had in the system would not be deadly. But the reason it was deadly was because he had sleep apnea. So, and I suspect Gilberto Nunez may not have been trying to kill him. He may have been trying to have his wife discover him and made it look like an affair, So the killing may have been an accident, but still, he allowed himself to be victimized, And a beta male right under your nose is going to shapeshift. His buddy did it. He had no idea. They were texting like a couple days earlier about like a football game or something. But anyway, and one last thing is Tom Coleman had a son named Bradley Coleman. And Bradley Coleman, on the year of the anniversary of his father's death, tried to self-delete by taking pills. He said he just wanted to go to sleep and be with his father in heaven. And, we understand that men, we need to be strong for ourselves, but if you have kids and a family, you need to be strong for them too. No son wants a beta male dad, so, but unfortunately, 3 months later, Bradley Coleman attempted it again and was successful in his self-deletion, and he passed away 3 months later after the year anniversary of his father's murder. So there's a second tragedy in this. And it's just awful. So men out there, if that's not a better way to convince you to not be beta, to get in shape, to get in the gym, to get jacked, to get motivated, I don't know what would be. But once again, we honor Tom Coleman, we honor his son Bradley Coleman. They were wonderful men, and everyone said they were wonderful people. But beta males are the most dangerous man you'll ever meet. They are shapeshifters. They are narcissistic, sociopathic, Machiavellian, in my opinion. And identify them when they're around. Be the alpha in any situation. Have the four virtues of man is strength, emotional and physical, courage, skills, and honor among men. But that's the Tom Coleman, Gilberto Nunez story. And we'll leave it right there, and we'll see you on the next one.